Canadian Wildlife Service,
Frank Baldwin,
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service,
Dave Scott,
Bird Banding Laboratory, USDA Aphis Wildlife Services,
Lee Humphrey.
USGS. All right. Anybody want to introduce guests?
Heath can introduce himself. He's lurking.
Heath, you want to say hi?
Fish and Wildlife.
There you go. And I also introduced Jillian Murphy, who was working with me here in Kentucky. She's kind of hiding in the background back there.
Wisconsin also has Amy Shipley on.
Minnesota has Bruce Davis.
Mississippi has Darren Hardesty.
We're sorry, Houston.
Owen Best, Louisiana.
Drew Fowler, Louisiana Co-op Unit.
Now, let me see. Somebody just beat that. There's Pam. Okay.
Pam's here. Now it's a party.
Okay.
Hey
All
guys.
right. Hi. And Paul Link. Okay, so we've got the roll call done. So what we generally do next is have a little update from either the Fish and Wildlife Service or Canadian Wildlife Service. So I'm going to start. I know Dave's got extended stuff to talk about. So start with Frank. Did you have anything that you wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, thanks, John. Not really, just a couple points. Canadian Wildlife Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are started pretty high-level discussions about review of different breeding population surveys. So the Eastern Survey and then the traditional survey, mainly focused around, sort of short and then long-term goals. As far as short-term goals, prioritization of different areas if survey effort needs to be reduced, due to budgetary reasons, and then long-term goals, which really will focus on addressing some of the issues associated with both surveys, making them more consistent analytically, et cetera. So those discussions are kind of starting at a high level, and then it gets stepped down to technical committees in both agencies. So Flyways can expect to hear more about that in the months to come. And then just kind of noteworthy media, we had a teen in British Columbia that's been hospitalized. That's our first human case of H5N1. I think they're in critical condition, so that's been making media here. I know there's been cases in the US also, but that's our first Canadian case, so that's drummed up quite a bit of interest in disease surveillance, both in birds and people. And then lastly, just that the mild fall conditions continue. Freeze up just starting in Saskatchewan. Catherine's on. I think they've had some cold weather that we're getting. Pretty much everything's still open with a little bit of snow conditions today, but things are going to change rapidly here, and I'm less certain with what's going on in Ontario, but should be pretty big migration anytime. And that was really it.
Any questions for Frank? Frank, I guess I heard a little rumor of a potential retirement coming up soon. Is Jack about to retire?
Jack Hughes?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not public knowledge.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
He hasn't announced it.
Okay. Never mind. Nobody heard that then.
But I can tell Frank that he'll probably leave in August, but you didn't hear that from me.
Okay. No, I hadn't heard that. Although, we're getting to that point where people are, can go out the door pretty quickly. So, Jim Leafler's in the same boat. He's been pretty public about when he's going. He's going to be retiring after Baffin Island banning in August. So, yeah, I hadn't heard about Jack though, but there you go.
Well, I think Jack, I think Jack will be fine. 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 I Sorry to break the news.
That's all right. I wish the best for them.
More power to them.
Yeah, JB, I'll
Okay,
just
Dave.
comment.
I'll just go to switch to you now. You've got anything
Yeah,
to share with us?
I'll just follow up on what Frank was talking about briefly, because 2 weeks ago, Black Duck Joint Venture, the AHM, the technical committee, and the management board met in Montreal. That's where I saw Jack. And, he failed to tell us that this was probably his last meeting, but I talked to him on the side and I'm pretty sure it was. So keep that secret, Frank, but sounds like he'll be going for the end of August. I've enjoyed him being the Canadian co-chair and working with him most consistently with that over the number of years. But the Black Duck Joint Venture and I believe the Sea Ducks Joint Venture both are helping to fund some of that survey efficiency work that Frank was talking about. And those conversations have started, and I think they'll get some technical support for it, primarily so that we do our job as efficiently as possible and align those things well, especially in the East, but I think it covers more than just that. So I have those comments to add to what Frank was talking about, and I have all my notes from SRC, which we can do later, JB. Unless you guys got any questions you want me to talk about now on something else.
I can't think. No update on the kind of the regulation setting process changes.
I have that in my SRC notes.
Okay, got you. All right, well, let's wait on that then, and we'll see. Mike, are you here? I saw you pop up at some point.
Yep.
Mike, you want to? Wes is here also. I kind of primed him to ask him if he could kind of jump in and help you out some, but just you want to talk about wetland reviews?
Yep, I can do that. So this is something I think JB and I talked about in Wes at the last summer meeting. JB had a little bit of background there in the agenda. They started down this road and actually got one of these done in Kentucky and had a good experience with it at Ballard. I think that's right, in it, John and Wes. So I think the idea was to gather experts from around the flyway and bring them to a WMA wildlife area, review what the infrastructure and the habitat looks like on the ground, kind of talk about management, past management, maybe hurdles to management that are there or perceived anyway, and then kind of draw on the collective experience of the folks that show up to the review to help the manager or the agency make decisions on how to maybe improve management or get past some of the hurdles they perceive at that area. They had a good experience with this before COVID hit, kind of put it on the back burner, and I think there's some interest, or we're going to talk about whether there's interest in rekindling some sort of process like this, if this would be a benefit to states, if anybody's interested in it, if someone wants to volunteer maybe or has an area in mind that they think would benefit from this, and just kind of open the table for discussion on if there's something that we think the Habitat Committee should spend time on moving forward. So Wes or John, I guess if I missed anything there or off base on the intent, feel free to chime in there.
I guess I'll just piggyback. So basically, the real benefit to this, and I'll just use Kentucky and our neighbors as the example, but Arkansas has Buck doing just magnificent things down there right now that there's no wetland managers in Kentucky other than me and JB that will ever find out about it. When we hosted at Ballard, you got Missouri's Frank Nelson coming over and sharing his expertise with our guys that would never have happened. And I'm sure every state has a neighbor that has some sort of a rock star or just somebody that's doing good work that your folks would benefit from seeing. Wetland managers, WMA managers. If me or JB try to tell them something, that goes in one ear and right out the other, because we're at a different setting. We're not on the WMA, but when somebody is out boots on the ground and on another WMA, they're more apt to listen and they really pay attention. And not only that, that was one level. Then we also had Heath coming in with his moist soil presentations and multiple others. Ours was big. I don't know that it has to be that huge every single time, but just getting presentations that WMA staff don't normally get to hear. That's, a lot of the stuff we get to hear doesn't trickle down to WMAs very well. And so just getting the folks from neighboring states, it wouldn't do any good for us to wetland review with Minnesota, but, bringing in, I mean, it was like 9 states showed up to ours, and it was huge. Like, there were people that I would have never guessed would have actually, listened or cared to say Heath's presentation. We had a commission member showed up who previously his only intention was to get every inch of Ballard planted into flooded corn that he could. And at the end, he's hitting Heath up for his notes and everything else. And by the end of the show, he's like, all right, we'll just plant corn at the road where people can see it. We saw just a tremendous shift in mindsets, and it had zero to do with anybody within the state. It was all just the relationships that were built after a few days of just discussing, a specific wetland review. So here's a blank slate. How would you go about managing from here? Throw money out the window. Money's no issue. Don't worry about, hunters. It's just, what would you do? And it allowed everybody to kind of flex their brain and bounce and feed off of each other. And it was just a tremendous resource here in Kentucky. And so prior to COVID, we kind of saw that as being a huge benefit that would go flyway wide, and everybody kind of was on board. And then we all were in our pajamas for a couple of years, and we stopped. So hopefully there's interest here. I see Heath's turned his camera on, so hopefully he's got something good to add as well. But that was the intention of us bringing this up. Come on, Heath. I thought for sure you had some gold for us.
Were you calling on me? I was just trying to be affable, right? Show my face and people running the other direction or not. I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was man, when was that? Was that like 2018 or 19? It's been a minute.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But that was a lot of fun. And I'll just say the most interesting thing was the blank slate, as you were pointing to, Wes, because it's been a minute, but the dividing up in groups and seeing what people came up with completely independently that was the same was interesting. And then what wasn't the same was pretty interesting too. So yeah, I'll just second that. A lot of people with different backgrounds, different interests, academic and management and so on and so forth in the room was pretty neat. And I thought y'all did a great job hosting that workshops.
And Heath, remind me, didn't you, the Fish and Wildlife Service in the Southeast, kind of continue that process? Did y'all, at least y'all were talking about it. I don't know that it ever happened, but y'all did it some too, didn't you?
We did. We didn't do as formal of like wetland reviews at an area like that, but we continued doing field days that had aspects of that several times a year, traveling around three or four times a year for a while there. And so we did do a lot of that, and then some other in-person stuff, but nothing as in depth at one location where you produced a report and so on and so forth. So I thought that was really neat, just all of the emphasis kind of on one location.
Yeah, I said, as we were talking about this, Mike and I were talking about it again. My original thing, and when we came out of that, it was exciting to have that. For me, we hugely benefit from all being together as a group and I get to hear what folks are thinking and learn from you guys so much. And then our managers don't get that. And so even if you had smaller regional, hey, here's 4 states in a cluster and we all get together and put those guys together in the same room, I think it's a huge benefit to them. And I think I sort of felt like we had kind of even sold our bosses on it, the idea of it. And then, like I say, COVID came along and just everything got crushed. And so I guess, Mike, if I remember right, our kind of discussion was to kind of introduce the idea at this meeting and then have folks go home and talk about it a little bit, and maybe in February come up with a plan for states that might be interested in hosting one and who might go.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. We can put it on the agenda for February, kind of talk about it if folks want to take the time between now and then and, see if there's interest in your state and kind of bring that information back.
Hey, Mike, I was just gonna add real quick, and sorry, I might have cut you off, Barb, but
Nope.
I wanted to just echo what Wes said, and he said is that the wetland review process can be a really profitable opportunity for on the ground managers and bringing in that kind of collaboration, people with different background experiences and different wetland systems. And I've gotten to participate in some wetland reviews, really more in the arid west. And it's really neat when you get people to come together across different systems and kind of help kind of out loud share their similarities about what they are seeing on the landscape, both from like changes in hydrology, how did the site historically function, what impairments have changed that function, and then how does the vegetation respond, and in turn how is biota, like migratory birds, responding to those changes too. When you start kind of piecing those together from historically, how did this operate, what are the soils, what are the what's the hydrologic function, what's been impaired, then you can kind of piece together what you would expect to predict in terms of biotic response when you start proposing different management actions. And I think it's a powerful tool. I know that we've been talking a little bit, our co-op unit has been with LDWF and trying to maybe put something together in Louisiana, just as like a workshop to kind of think through some of those things. And I think it's a great idea at the flyway level too. And how cool would it be if you had different managers from across the flyway being able to go and learn, how other managers are thinking, not just about how to manage that particular wetland, but how their wetland sits within the larger flyway scale and what they're managing for at different times, not just during maybe winter, but across the whole annual life cycle. So just want to put my 2 cents in for that.
Thanks, Drew. Barb?
Yeah, Mike, I just wanted to make you aware, and I can't remember if we talked in August about this or not, but when I was out at Ducks 9, I struck up a conversation with Brian Glazinski with Ducks Unlimited in Wisconsin and some other folks that were there. I think, yeah, John Simpson was there too. Anyway, we kind of started riffing on this idea of the need for like a wetland management, some kind of wetland management training for our staff. Especially, we were thinking more of like the new staff. Like we've got an awful lot of folks coming in, right? A lot of like people retiring, a lot of that knowledge going out the door. Some of these young folks coming in just have like literally zero experience with wetland management. And I think a lot of you share the same right issue, is that even when we're advertising for jobs at these wetland management areas, we're not getting like really, really qualified candidates. So they're coming in really green. So we had kind of started with this idea. So this would just be kind of a Great Lakes again. We were thinking Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio. John had offered to, potentially host it there at Minus Point. Maybe we'd grab Indiana, Illinois in there if they were interested. But I just want to make you aware of that. Nothing has like formalized yet. Just kind of, like I said, still talking about this idea, but there does seem to be an awful lot of support for it. Taylor, I can't remember. Maybe I talked with you in August about this, but just something to keep in mind. It's not exactly, it doesn't sound right, like exactly like the wetland reviews. This would be more for, like I said, kind of more, I think like, entry level wetland managers. And then we were kind of thinking of, maybe a good model to use would be like a train the trainer. So each state would send, maybe 3-4 of their managers and then, go back home and then kind of put on as many of these as you need to. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that, Mike, and, let me know if you're interested, and I can kind of loop you in whenever Brian and John and I talk again.
Yeah, definitely interested. Thanks for the background there. I wasn't aware of that, but I will, I guess, share something from Ohio. We just filled 17 positions. Our wildlife area coordinator, which is our boots on the ground position, and we interviewed 40 something people, I think, for that. And we had a wetland habitat management question on the interview. We did not award a single point across 40 something interviews on that wetland habitat management question. So definitely seeing folks coming out of places like Ohio State with no background, not even able to pick up a point. So that was pretty rough. So the need's there for sure. All right, well, John, unless you think the conversation needs to go any further, I think we'll leave it at, think about if a state would want to participate in something like what Kentucky did. And if so, we'll make sure this is on the agenda in February. We'll talk about it. Or if it's, something similar to this, like Barb mentioned, maybe just training for entry-level staff, not necessarily going to a wetland and in an area and doing as thorough of a review as they did in Kentucky, but some different form of this. I guess something to look at managing wetlands and train staff, or come up with a formal review at an area in a given state. We'll kind of bring it back up in February.
Yeah, I think Barb's approach makes sense, kind of a regional. Again, what I thought you'd have that northern, and then you might have a central, and you might have a south or whatever. And so the folks can, within a reasonable amount of time, travel to it, and you might get reasonable participation from folks. I think it's a great idea. It was just, even with experienced folks, I just felt like everybody benefited from being in the room, like from being there with Heath to being there, whatever, we even seemed like we had a state senator there that came in and talked. And so, there's all kinds of different folks there, and I think everybody benefited. So I'm a huge proponent of doing this and getting our folks together. So unless anything else, we'll move on, Mike.
Yep, no, that sounds good. Thank you.
All right. I keep turning myself on mute because I'm so used to not trying to hide. Okay, so our next topic is, again, a fairly light day today, but our next topic is one of my favorite topics, is common mergansers. Nate, are you out there, buddy?
Yep, I'm here.
You want to kind of share what your request would be?
Sure, and I think Taylor and Barb will have more to add beyond what I'm talking about. But yeah, anyway, we're dealing with, it sounds like you all have heard of it, at least in the past, from Michigan and Wisconsin, in terms of common mergansers being asked to be moved to kind of mitigate or remove swimmer's itch from the area. There's a company that appears to be soliciting business to that effect here in Minnesota. And I think we've denied the permit now 3 times. He's trying to do a research permit. We've denied it now 3 times. And we have an additional, another lake that's come online, and I've heard of now another lake that is starting to ask questions about it as well. So as part, we've taken a firm stance that we are not interested in people moving mergansers around the landscape to try and mitigate swimmer's itch. And I can still say those things. I don't know if others in the room can say those things. But the Fish and Wildlife Service has expressed that they are not interested in renewing the permit for this individual again, but they would appreciate the flyway providing their opinion on the matter for when that does happen. He's up for permit renewal in April. So I don't know if Taylor or Barb want to add any more context to this discussion. I'm just kind of didn't want to write a letter until I heard from folks that folks were interested in or willing to consider such a letter that would be in opposition to people moving common mergansers to prevent swimmer's itch. But
what I can provide is factual information, as we are currently under litigation and being sued by this individual for not providing research permits. We were not supportive that this was bona fide research. So like I said, we're currently under lawsuit on that, we are more than willing to provide the factual information as to the justification as to why we have not provided said permit. But from perspective, again, because it's a current legal situation, I cannot advocate or push for anything moving forward other than to provide that information.
And I'll put my tail between my legs because it's Michigan that started this whole thing, right? Those of you that were around back in 2017, if you remember, I gave a riveting presentation on our new common merganser control program that, quite honestly, we were forced to develop it. It wasn't the individual that Nate's talking about that has the business, but a lot of the landowners were successful arguing to their legislators that they needed something to happen here, and they wanted mergansers moved. So there was actually legislation that funded this in Michigan. So we were forced to develop a program. I wish at that time that the Fish and Wildlife Service would have taken a stronger stance and just said, no, we're not going to permit this. But they said they would just follow suit with whatever Michigan decided. So we have had this program now for 7, 8 years. It's very small. There's only about 3, I think maybe 4 lakes that still participate in this. Most of the lakes that had been participating kind of came to the conclusion that it's a very expensive program, and that it wasn't necessarily all that effective, that they thought they could have more long-term effectiveness by taking preventative measures. A lot of them have done some pretty neat lake modeling where they take water samples and, they can say, oh, the wind, is from this direction at this wind speed today. Probably not good to swim at this beach, on this shore. But if you want to swim over on this shore, it should be safe today. A lot of them have kind of went that direction. All of that said, it has not really been a big issue here in Michigan. I'm not a fan of the program at all, but I believe that there's still enough support for it, that if Michigan at the Flyway kind of went on record as saying, we were opposed to this, that may cause some issues. So I am all for a letter like this. I think it would be outstanding, and I really hope that the Fish and Wildlife Service can deny these types of requests. I just don't know that Michigan's going to be able to be on record as saying that we support that, because we have had this program for so many years now with very little impact. That's just here in Michigan, though. I mean, from the beginning, this is what I was worried about, right? Is that sure, there might not be impact from a handful of lakes in northern Michigan that are doing this. But now all of a sudden, if it's Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota, and I'm sure Maine is next, then all of a sudden, you actually could start to see some population level impacts to mergansers. So I am all for a letter saying that we do not support this happening. I just don't know that I can sign on to that letter.
Yeah, all your persecution on Barb have driven them. Now they're nested in Kentucky and Tennessee and all that. So it's going to be, next thing you know, Jamie's going to be worried about Swimmer's Edge down there in eastern Tennessee.
I have bigger things to worry about than that.
That's what you say now.
Yeah, again, this is from Wisconsin's perspective. This has been 5 years. Now we have been dealing with this individual and a push with this one lake association, and now it's trying to expand into other lake associations, including Minnesota. And quite honestly, there's been communication issues with what this individual has informed other state or federal agencies as to what is actually happening. And so again, there's not consistency with this request. And that's been also some of our concern with this. And yeah, from a flyway perspective, we heard the similar thing from the Fish and Wildlife Service, that it would be nice to have ahead of time for reissuing this individual's permit, to have a letter from the flyway saying that this activity is not necessarily supported, um, based on his justification as research.
So Nate, based on kind of what he said, is your hope that we would send a letter, that we'd have a position statement from the flyway, or that we would send a letter to the service asking them to take a position on this?
I think it would be a letter to the service stating our position on this.
Dave, you want to have any input on that?
I'm interested in what you come up with, but obviously it's going to go to the regional office, to Brian Smith and his permit staff. Barb should just drive over there and talk to Brian.
I don't have a call from Brian, but in my voicemail yesterday, I noticed I do have a call from, I don't know her, I can't remember her name. She took, is it Deanne's place? Anyway, she's got a call to me.
She reached out to us 2 weeks ago, and
Okay.
our research program had a very thorough discussion about what, and so again, I believe that she understands this situation and scenario, her being relatively new. However, she does recognize what this is, and she was the one who indicated that some additional help on this may be appreciated when an ultimate decision comes forward.
So,
Hey guys,
okay.
this is Bruce Davis. Can I add?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add. This research proposal that came to us, we evaluated, and it's not really a research proposal. There's no measurement of how the relocated broods survive. There's no measurement of um, uh, birds moving back into the lake. There's, we outlined a whole bunch of research questions that, aren't a part of this guy's research proposal at all. And our stance is really that he's requesting a management action. And so I think we need, that letter would have to state that, or it'd be helpful if that letter would state that we're not in favor of research, or of either research actions or management actions, that would move birds around. And we also see it as a stepping stone. Like, we're afraid, okay, if we let people start moving mergansers around, what's next? Okay, they're going to want to move mallard broods, they're going to want to move other stuff, but mergansers are still a game bird. So I think we should be pretty cautious about letting people just manipulate those populations. Anyway, that's all I've got.
And Bruce, I mean, to your point, those concerns about the lack of research or emphasis on that were brought up 5 years ago to this individual. So it's not a lack of understanding or knowledge or information. At this point, it's become a choice to not do that. And that has been one of the reasons why the Wisconsin DNR has not, approved his permit request.
Yep. I fully understand that.
And it goes back even farther than that, Bruce, that's how this originally started in Michigan, was under a scientific collector's permit. And then the department, the DNR, we finally said, this isn't research, this is not appropriate work under this type of permit. So, that's where it spiraled into a whole different program. And Michigan DNR, we ended up getting, we have a permit from the Fish and Wildlife Service giving us the authority for this, common merganser program. And so that's how we're issuing like permits to this individual. He's the only contractor doing it at this point. But yeah, same thing. He has been aware now for at least a decade that this is not research and that is not an appropriate permit for this work.
Thanks,
Y'all, those of us who are not from that part of the world, I assume, so it's just one private company doing this. There's no wildlife services, or aren't involved in it. It's just into one company.
Yep, one company. There used to be two companies, and then there was like a big rift, and now it's just the one company. And it's interesting because the other company now is trying to encourage these lakes to not trap and transfer mergansers, to do something more like the, preventative measures, the lake modeling, that type of approach.
Yeah, and I guess I would add his approach has been, at least now, seems to be he's going to these lake associations and having them propose to us that they do relocations and research on mergansers. So swimmer, this company is not proposing it directly. He's asking the lake associations to make that, which, there's a lot of lake associations in Minnesota. So I think we're at 3 of them right now are asking, Nate, and
Yep.
I would expect that number is going to climb dramatically because we had 3 requests for this in a very short period of time. So he got to at least 3 associations and got them convinced to do this.
And that's currently who we are being sued through. We are not being sued through the company. We are being sued through the Lake Association.
Yep. Yeah. So anyway, that's why it'd be beneficial to have a flyway agreement on this.
So, Nate, as far as the meeting goes, we could come up with a letter that we could all vote on. It would go through, I'm trying to think, what is this?
Diving Duck.
Committee? Diving Duck? Okay. Yeah, through the Diving Duck Committee. Nate, are you okay with taking the lead on this letter, or does that create political hardship for you that you need somebody in a non-Merganser state to do it?
I think I'm okay. I haven't
Okay.
been told not to talk about this yet, so
Okay.
I think we're still in the green. So I think I'm happy to lead it until I might have to hand it off in a couple of months, I guess.
Well,
But
if you can get it started, then any of us that that you need to help out, and if some of you need to abstain or whatever, your friends in the South can help you out on this one.
cool.
Any further discussion about these kind of things do just kind of spiral out of control. You get one and it's not that big a deal, and then all of a sudden you've got 100 lake associations asking to do this, and poor little McGansers have to move to Kentucky. All right, well, we will move on to our next topic, which is the SRC wrap up from Dave. I was able to watch a portion of it yesterday, but I did not come back and see the end section where they came back to the room. And I had a few thoughts along the line, but we're going to let Dave give us a wrap up first.
Dave, we were so close to 4-1. We were so close.
Yeah, it's true. All right. Well, I know that several of you were in attendance live stream yesterday based on email traffic and texts that I received. And then, we're in that closed session at the end, having a secret meeting with the SRC members, trying to, keep them from doing something we don't like. And Barb's trying to call me, my phone's ringing. It's, trying to interrupt our good work, but it all worked out, I think, in the end. I took a few notes during the meeting. I typed that stuff up this morning so I could try to cover this effectively for John and the rest of you. So the main issue for discussion, as you probably are aware, was the Central Flyway's additional zone split configurations recommendation that they put forward. As an aside, the rest of the Flyway reps gave Cooper grief because he couldn't control his Flyway. But in the closed session, the SRC asked lots of questions and seemed to want to avoid saying no. They were wondering how many states would actually be interested. They were under, I think, a false impression that it was only like 2 states in the Central Flyway that wanted to do this. Tried to explain to them that sometimes when these options are offered, that states have to deal with constituents and commissions who might decide that they should try it, and it becomes a bigger thing than what it was intended to be. So after a while, listening to this debate, we were supposed to have like a 30-minute break and come back, and it went into about 45, 50 minutes. So I started just making a statement to the SRC members about what I thought we were hearing and mixed that in with what some of us wanted. And eventually I got what he said, write it up. So Cooper and I, mostly with a little input from others, drafted a statement, gave it to Jerome, and that's what he used. And I'll read it to you. The SRC does not support this recommendation at this time. However, we look forward to receiving the report from the current evaluation of the new zone split option that was approved in 2020. Further, this issue may better be addressed through the work of the AHM task force. We are open to having a larger discussion about hunting regulations, how hunting regulations address R3 objectives and hunter satisfaction. We also need to have a more in-depth discussion about the objectives and measures of success from an HD and biological perspective. The SRC supports continued discussion between DMBM staff and the Flyway Tech section and councils moving forward. So that's what went in the record, and we'll see how things progress. But I guess we got a soft no when some of us just wanted a hell no for the record. So that was that issue. Harvest Management Working Group priorities, the SRC endorsed the various Flyway recommendations that came forth. They were all pretty consistent. With respect to the AHM task force, each Flyway and now Fish and Wildlife Service have designated 2 representatives, although I do believe that the Central might only have Sean Oldenburger, and they're still looking for a director level person. The Fish and Wildlife Service representatives are Will Meeks and Jerome Ford. An initial kickoff meeting is tentatively planned for the week of December the 16th. That will be right after the Harvest Management Working Group meets. Fish and Wildlife Service staff have been drafting terms of reference for consideration by the group. And Jerome noted that it's more than just, a lack of funding or limited funding, but it also touches on capacity, defining what's acceptable risk, engaging with emerging technology, et cetera. Those all have to be considered. Joe Benedict reiterated the desire from the Flyways to see that we maintain monitoring during the interim period as this group is meeting until a new path can be determined. With respect to the new draft regulations process, Todd Sanders provided a PowerPoint to SRC on the whole process and where we are. The draft documents are in review internally with the department right now. The next steps include briefing OMB and then getting the draft regulation published in the Federal Register. The earliest possible date would be in January of 2025 or shortly thereafter. And then we would need 6 months to move that to a final rules that could be published. And that would be sometime in summer 2025 if it happens at all. So if that happened, it is actually possible to use it for the 25-26 rulemaking, but it's highly unlikely that it'll move fast enough. And therefore, we could use the new rule if it moves forward in 26-27. Our current preliminary rule that's in draft, it's being reviewed and hopefully it'll come out soon, noted that this process was being initiated and would be used if it's available. The two-tier webinar survey results, which I sent a copy of that to all of you when I got a copy of that from the Central Flyway. Rocco did a quick overview of that for the SRC. Ken talked about the report release date and why that's necessary. He reviewed the history and the reduced capacity that we have to complete all the assessments by the August 20th date. He noted delays also from some states and USGS with getting the needed data for the process. And the buffers needed to ensure high quality work with current staff limitations. And he did commit to releasing the reports earlier if they were available. We had that. And then Joe Benedict added, he wanted to talk about the timing and format of the SRC meetings. Really, Joe was asking for the possibility of not only meeting in person at least once in a while, but just having a standard week on the calendar, you know, like the third week of October or, you know, fourth week of April, whatever, to have that as the week that the spring and fall meeting would take place. They didn't really get good consensus on that, although the excuses have been our budget, the cost of paying for the meeting, the busy schedules with the SRC members, and Jerome noted that a hybrid meeting might work. So the issue was raised, and we'll see what happens. There's been some internal discussion about the task force once it gets started and it has its work to do for a couple of years, that maybe we could align the task force, some of their meetings with the SRC in the fall, so that we would have a good reason to have staff there and some of the flyways participating as well. So that's my quick and dirty summary of what happened yesterday. Any questions, JB or others?
Yeah, I was watching it, and when they were going through and each of the flyways was giving the recommendation on pintails, I was really waiting for Sean Espinoza from the Pacific Flyway to say, we were just messing with y'all. We just want one.
Yeah, I was waiting for Joe to say, we want two.
Dave, when you say a soft no, just from the standpoint
instead of just telling Central Flyway, you know, we don't support this period. You know,
so
but it's like there's enough already.
In the soft no, that means that it's out for this coming cycle, though.
Well, yes.
Or can it get revived this summer somehow or another?
Unless the department or Martha or somebody, because these are recommendations from the SRC to the director, and then they go to the assistant secretary. So unless there's somebody changes it there, which is not likely, it will come out in the proposed as, you know, we entertain this recommendation and it's not supported. So here's what's available, which will be the same as what was available last time. But what the SRC is essentially saying is that we need to continue the discussion, because if we can find a way to better evaluate these types of things in the future, I think they would be open to considering them. So I don't think it's going to happen now, but they don't want to close that door for the future.
Dave, and I can say from my council member who was watching, he appreciated Sean Oldenburger reaching out to you guys, saying some guidance on what the type of information that the service requires in order to make this happen would be appreciated. Because as of right now, it's, well, just do a survey, tell us how it's going, and we don't know if we're actually capturing the correct information or what information needs to be captured.
Yeah, and I would like to have a conversation with Jason before Louisiana does their evaluation also. And, you know, depending on where they are in that process, maybe that's something we can talk about in February.
Yeah, I support that. I was thinking the same thing during that call, and we're at a point right now, as that survey is being put together, where some guidance on what would make it more useful for other states going forward would be nice.
So set up a time to chat, Jason, if you want to, here in the near future. And depending on your timeline, we might be able to also have a group discussion and see if you get any other ideas. There you go, JB.
All right. Nothing else too terribly exciting. Nice to have things go pretty easily, I guess. So the last thing that I had on the agenda here was HIP representation. Oren wanted me to share this with y'all. That as the chair, I guess it was last meeting, there was kind of some discussion of creating a little group that would work with Brad Bortner on basically research to investigate HIP and how it works. And so Oren has chosen Nate and Jason as our representatives on that group. Nate, do you have anything, or Jason, you want to add to what Oren said? Nope.
Yeah, I really don't have anything now,
Okay.
other than we were nominated last week or so. So yeah.
All right, y'all both do great, and it's such an important topic, so it'll be certainly worthwhile. So I think that's most of the things that we had on there. Does anybody have anything else? Poor Barb, I sent her a couple weeks ago a message to say, okay, what's our HD topic of the month? And she says, well, JB, there aren't going to be any more HD topics of the month. And so I had to cry a little bit, but it sure was, I'm sure happy for her, but I'm sure going to miss seeing her shining happy face at all these meetings.
Thanks, JB. Yeah, and there's a plug. If anybody, we're going to need a new HD committee chair.
Well, if Wes had not moved on to another job, I would be nominating him right now. So he got lucky.
I haven't moved on from the flyway yet. So
that's true. That's true. In theory, eventually you might, though.
Yeah, and neither is Barb. We're still trying to keep her in some
I think
capacity.
you have to know something about human dimensions to be the chair, though, JB.
I had one last question for Dave, I guess, and watching the stuff, I was thinking about all the kind of discussions about, well, there's no data to inform our decision about whether zone splits have any impact. Do you know, at one point you helped me kind of find some, we've gone to a new website where only the last 2 or 3 years worth of reports, the annual reports on harvest are available. Did we ever come up with a way that we could get some of those old reports that, in my mind, I was curious over time if like southern states have seen a change in, age ratios, harvest age ratios. That might be something that showed that there was, that some of these zone split things were having an impact or not having an impact.
Are you talking about something beyond the data book? Something beyond what Kathy's shop?
The data book doesn't include that for states. So it has an overall Mallard, whatever age ratio, harvest age ratio, but it doesn't have, say, for Mississippi, or if you look generally in North, you've got a very high number of young birds per adult, and then when you get to the South, you've got the reverse. So if that has changed over time, maybe in relation to the total harvest, then that might be something that can either support or not support the idea that these things have had an effect. So I guess I was just asking, our annual migratory bird activity and hunting report or whatever that comes out is on the website that's only available for the last 3 years. And I guess at some point they the gist was that they are have to be compliant to certain rules, and that they had taken all the old ones down. Is there a way to get those old ones that we can, have a complete collection of them somewhere in a way that we don't have to have them, accessibility compliant?
Well, I think that, talking to Kathy in the shop, you could get access to any of the old stuff. But
Okay.
maybe it's because of 508 compliance with, some of our past stuff being on the website. I'm not sure, but that tends to be a reason why things aren't available.
Yeah, there was some kind of compliance that, at one point they were all there, and I never saved them because they were always on the web. Why do I need to save them? And then one day they were just all gone, and it had to do with compliance. And supposedly they were working on getting the old ones compliant, but it's been a couple years now, and it really seems that we're only putting up the new ones.
I'm sure that's pretty low on a priority list of things to get done. But
I got you.
If we have reason to pursue that, we can certainly go through Stephen and others at Kathy's shop to get
Okay.
access to some of that archive stuff.
Okay. Anybody else with any? Pam's been quiet this whole discussion. Pam, you got anything exciting for us? Like, no way, I'm hiding. I know Brett Leach, you got something exciting? They're like, nope. Oh, there he is.
No, I don't have a whole lot.
Okay. All right. Well, with that then, unless anybody else has anything they want to share, we will call it a day. We'll see you all next month. And just one last thing before you bail, if you didn't hear, we basically delayed the discussion on the winter banding proposal till next month. We were promised a proposal by the beginning of December, so as soon as I get that proposal, I will send it to you all, or Oren will send it to you all, and we'll be able to discuss it better coming in mid-December.
But it sounds like JB made a motion to adjourn, but we need a second.
Alabama.
Thanks, Seth.
I saw Brett blinking there. I was hoping Brett was going to jump in, but all right. Well, thanks everybody. We will see you all next month.
See ya.
Everyone, thank you.
Take care, folks.
Thanks.
So you think this thing has a transcript?